Just want to welcome everyone here today. Thank you for being with us for our Lunch and Learn series. Today we've got Doretta Boazzo, with the Security Department of General Dynamics Mission Systems, and Lauren Faulkner, who is recruiter there. General Dynamics Mission Systems provides smarter mission critical systems and products to defense, civil government, intelligence, and cybersecurity customers. They help those who serve succeed and get home safely, which is extremely important. So they're headquartered in Fairfax, Virginia, and also located in several other states. And I want to start with Lauren Faulkner. Would you welcome us?
Yes, thank you so much, Julia. My name is Lauren Faulkner. I'm University Relations at General Dynamics Mission Systems. I oversee our entire university strategy when it comes to what schools we go to, and I'm very happy to say Virginia Tech is absolutely one of our top schools, especially the computer science department. As Julia mentioned, we do mission critical solutions, a lot of computing infrastructure across land, air, sea, space, and cyber applications, predominantly in the defense market. So we have opportunities nationwide, and we're really happy to be here to talk to you all, you Hokies. And I'm happy to introduce here Doretta. Doretta is from our security office, and she's going to deliver what the security clearance process is and what that means in the defense industry, especially to employers like General Dynamics. So Doretta, I'll let you go.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to be with you this afternoon. As Lauren said, I am locally at the office for General Dynamics up in Maryland. I deal with some customers that are in our Fort Meade area. So I'm very familiar with some extended processing. A lot of the information you're going to get today will be specific to the Department of Defense and our government customers, because that's that's basically what we're talking about when we get to this exact subject. Okay, exactly what is a security clearance? A security clearance is an inquiry actually into a person's background. What they do is look into the whole person. So they're naturally going to look to see whether or not that person, since this is a government clearance, whether the person is loyal to our government, where they are of upstanding character, whether they're trustworthy, reliable, have an integrity when it comes to the work they're doing. Naturally, we are working with taking care of our servicemen and women on the battlefield. So it's very important that we put our best people on the job to support that, that effort. Obviously, one of the things that we require a security clearance for is to counter any threats against our servicemen and women and the government. Those threats can come from a number of sources. Here are three that are listed here. Foreign intelligence services, naturally, terrorist groups, obviously, and then any of those who may wish to overthrow our government through illegal means. And it's interesting when you're looking at the news today and you see the political climate, you're not necessarily thinking of the threats to our nation as a whole, not the political parties, but necessarily the people that are serving our country in military facilities around the world, as well as our normal personnel on the street in your neighborhood, next door to you. We are working to maintain the security of the environment that you're familiar with stemming from a democratic country. Obviously, we're looking to counter the threats from any individuals who would be susceptible to pressure or improper influence from someone who may have a direction to kind of waylay where we are, someone who would obviously be dishonest, and anyone who would demonstrate behavior that would be unreliable. Those are individuals that you would not want to have a security clearance because they would be given information that could be of detriment to the national security. Now, it's probably more important for you to understand that the person who determines the clearance, we're going to call it a personnel security clearance because it is actually about the person who is requiring the information, okay? And the determination that that employee is eligible is based on a review of a number of things about that person, okay? Not necessarily their family or, you know, their roommate. It's going to be about that person. There's going to be a background investigation where they will talk to your neighbors, your coworkers, any employers you've had to find out if you appear to be stable. There will be a personal interview. They will look at your credit reports to see that you are maintaining balance in your financial dealings. Also, they will look to see if you have any records with the FBI that would be of a negative, you know, connection. Also, any local law enforcement records, and that includes anything from a speeding ticket to I don't know, shoplifting. I'm going to give some crazy examples here, but as you can imagine, someone, you know, with a speeding ticket would also have a record, but not necessarily an indication that they should not be getting classified information made available to them. Now, for the case of this for this presentation, the people that are responsible for issuing the personnel security clearance, in this case, are the Department of Defense and in any of the agencies that work within the Department of Defense. You see a list of them there. There is the overall Department of Defense, and then we have the Department of the Navy, the Army, the Air Force, and the Marines. When can an individual be processed for a clearance? When you are employed by a cleared contractor for a job requiring access to that information. You can't wake up this morning and say, I think I want a security clearance. You have to have a reason to need one. And when you are either a government employee or a contractor working for a government employee, the government decides that they would want you to have access to their information. So in our case, General Dynamics does not have the authority to grant, deny, or revoke a security clearance for our employees. Only the government can do that. And the government will put in a request for specific talents, and then General Dynamics or other contractors will say, we have, you know, John Doe, and he meets your requirements. And then the government would review John Doe's background briefly through input from the security officer, someone like me, doing a cursory look at kind of like a job application kind of thing. We call it a pre-screen questionnaire. And then the government would determine that John has the skills and John has the ability to be processed for a clearance. Now, there are different levels of security clearance, as you can imagine. A top secret level, and with our top secret levels at some of our offices, we have a compartmented clearance that goes with those. Those are called SCIs, and a polygraph is required for those. Generally, it's important that you remember that to have a top secret clearance, any information that would be lost through a compromise could result in exceptionally grave damage to our nation's security. And that's why the top secret level is so critical in meeting the needs of the security structure of our United States. Some of the advantages to having the security clearance is that it will give a company the ability to compete at a higher level for United States government contracts that are classified. As you can imagine, it also gives you as an employee a competitive edge to companies who might need cleared employees. Someone who has a security clearance generally can command a higher salary. They also, because the clearance is maintained by the government and assigned to you, the government keeps track of you. And when you're carrying that clearance, you are basically an asset to the United States government to be used as they need you for the skills that you have. An applicant for a clearance must be a US citizen, because that would indicate obviously that you have loyalty to the United States as a country and not another country. You must be stable, you must be trustworthy, you must be reliable, and you should be of excellent character, judgment, and discretion. And again, as I said, unquestionable loyalty to the United States. Some of the things that you would not be a good candidate for was that you should not be an advocate for the use of force or violence to overthrow the government by unconstitutional means. and you should not be subject to mental, physical, or other forms of duress by a foreign power. For example, we would not want someone who has a security clearance to be able to be blackmailed by a foreign intelligence service, because that would definitely not be good to have basically a fox in the hen house, as they say, or you wouldn't want to spy within your system because that person can be blackmailed by a foreign entity. All applicants for the security clearance or for some of the contracts are required to provide proof of U.S. citizenship. And that would mean, for the example of me being a security officer, you would interact with someone like me, and you would have to provide the original of that document. I would have to see the original of your birth certificate or a passport, or if you were someone who was born abroad to U.S. citizens, we would ask to see that document. You could also be a naturalized citizen, and in that case, we would want to see your naturalization paperwork. And also, if you have been military or you are ROTC or something like that, the paperwork that comes with that is also part of the security clearance package. How does the process work? Well, first the candidates provide all kinds of paperwork to me. In my case, that we are connected with our candidates via email. We go over some of the requirements for someone to have a clearance, and one of the things that happens to be a little bit of a sticking point right now is that the federal government does not permit the use of marijuana. So that happens to be a drug requirement for drug enforcement. The federal law, as I said, does not recognize marijuana as a legal substance. So that is a question that comes up. On the questionnaire, you will have to answer all kinds of questions about your name, where you've lived, where you were born, countries that you visited. There are forms that you must sign that will release your information from police departments and credit forms and that kind of information. And that information all goes to the government. It is compounded and collected by me or your security officer for completeness, make sure all of the boxes are checked and the lines are filled out. And then we submit that form to the government agency that has requested you receive clearance with them. And as you remember from that other slide, there are a number of different agencies, and each of those agencies has a different focus in their responsibilities. So when they're looking at you for clearance responsibilities, they're looking at you through those eyes, through the eyes of what their mission is. As appropriate, the investigation results in a lot of information. They send out investigators, and they do field interviews to check your references. So if you say you graduated from such and such school, they contact that school and they want to get a copy of your transcripts. They will also contact your neighbors, possibly personal friends. They generally ask for you to provide 3 people that have known you very well, and they will contact those individuals and even find out if they can give them other names of people that might know you. And they're going to check to see what kind of person you are. Are you true to your word? Are you trustworthy? They check records of, as I said, courts, rental offices, employers, and then they will actually conduct a personal interview with you and ask you very specific questions so that you have an opportunity to answer those questions directly, as well as ask questions of that interviewer and find out a little bit more maybe about the type of position that you're interested and what the clearance would limit you to be involved in. People who have disqualified but are not limited to I say certain things have popped up that would limit someone from getting a clearance. As I said before, would be unlawful users of those or those addicted to controlled substances. And as I said right now, marijuana is considered one of those substances for federal employment. Now, it does not mean that if you ever used an illegal substance, you are not eligible for a clearance. That is far from the case. What happens is they want to make sure that the individual is not currently involved in an addictive behavior, and if it was a while back that you were involved in using some sort of illegal substance and you've no longer been part of that lifestyle, they will more than likely consider you for clearance and investigate your usage before they determine that you are disqualified or qualified for the clearance. What about unfair discrimination? Well, as you saw in the news, all applicants, our Supreme Court came out with some very interesting information this week, which is a benefit to people that are looking for clearances and having questions. All applicants for clearance are treated impartially and consistently, regardless of their gender, their race, their marital status, age, ethnic origin, religious affiliation, or sexual orientation. What safeguards are in place to ensure your privacy? Well, government employees involved in the clearance process must meet the highest standards of integrity and personal conduct. That includes somebody like me, okay? I'm not a government employee, I'm a General Dynamics employee, but involving myself in the clearance process has also required that I have a security clearance, and I have also signed documentation that none of the information that is made available to me will be released without release forms from the applicants involved. So if an investigator comes and wants to investigate you or the file that I have on you, they have to provide me with a release form that you have signed to get the information from us. And they also have to provide release forms to an HR department. So if they're going to check an employer, they have a release form that you have signed that says that that employer can release information to you, on you. Information received during an investigation is protected under all U.S. laws and statutes, and any new information even they offer greater protection, because I'm sure you saw that OPM was hacked. And so what they've done as a result of that is OPM has provided additional protection to the individuals who received security clearances that OPM has records for. The government exercises great care to ensure accuracy of all the information collected. What happens when the investigation and polygraph are complete? And we didn't go into the polygraph part of it too much, but in addition to having a top secret security clearance, when you are going to get a security clearance for some of the specific agencies, you are required to additionally go through a polygraph examination. And in the polygraph, there are very specific questions that they can ask. There's only 7 questions. 3 or 4 are on lifestyle questions, and the others are on your personal, I guess your personal counterintelligence knowledge and interest. One of the things basically they want to make sure is that you are not loyal to a terrorist organization, or that you are not trying to surreptitiously, break into a computer system. So, I mean, they do everything they can, and the polygraph is another way that they use the information to determine whether or not you're a hacker and you're trying to break into the system. When that investigation and your polygraph is complete through that agency, a trained government affiliated adjudicator will review the results, compare them to all that information that was picked up on those investigative questions, and they will refer that information to the polygraph, click it back and forth, and make a determination as to whether or not the process was approved and you in fact can be indoctrinated and briefed on to get the security clearance. And as you can imagine, when that happens, you literally sign a contract with the United States government that you will uphold the laws of the United States and maintain the responsibilities that have been requested of you. Now, a lot of people say, well, how long does the process take? Well, it can take a long time. Some of the things that extend the length of processing is whether or not you've lived in the United States all your life. As you can imagine, it costs money and time to send an investigator overseas to investigate your friends, where you've lived, if you've had jobs over there, if you've been assigned there militarily. Most of the time, average process takes about 12 months for someone to go through the entire process of the background investigation and a polygraph, because as you can imagine, parts of it are happening at the same time. if an investigator is going out to look and talk to your employers, there may be someone else who's exchanging information with the banks. So it takes a while for all that stuff to get together, and then they put that package together for the adjudicator. What would cause delays in the processing? As I said, if you didn't live in the same country that the process was taking place in, if you had inaccurate or incomplete information, and also if the investigation has to be expanded to clear up any discrepancies. If you had, say, I don't know, one employer on the West Coast who said that they saw a certain activity, and then another employer maybe on the East Coast who saw a different activity out of you, or that maybe there was a mix-up on your Social Security number, anything that you can imagine that would mess up your credit report would extend your processing. Next slide. Would you be told whether or not the clearance was granted? Yes. The government will then notify the company's security officer that's processing you, and then that security office will notify you and conduct any required briefings. Some of the briefings that would be required, especially when they are sensitive information clearance briefings, actually are conducted on government sites. So you may be required to set up an appointment through your security officer to go and actually have that briefing done there. This is why it's really important for you to make your security officer your buddy. I have a lot of people that come to me and ask all kinds of questions before they fill their paperwork out to make sure that all of their documentation is 100% right. You know, the messing up of a zip code or an address or somebody's phone number is going to delay an investigator from finding that person. So it may not seem like a big deal, but if you're an investigator and you're looking at 40 cases, you're going to do the one that has all the information in place a lot faster and quicker than you will if you have to go track down the phone number for John Doe's friend, who we just know he lives at this address. We don't know his phone number. It'd be a lot easier if we could call him correctly and set up an appointment to go meet him. If your clearance was denied, can you appeal? Yes, you can. You're going to find out why the clearance was denied. They don't tell me. If the clearance has been denied, you will receive information personally sent with a registered mail to your home of record that explains who the actual clearance was being granted by, which agency, how to reach them, and they will also give you the actual reason for the denial. And also at that time, in that letter, you will be given instructions as to how to appeal the denial of the clearance determination, if that is the record and the way you choose to go. As a cleared person, you do have several privileges. It's not a right. And these are the things that when you sign up for a security clearance, you're saying, this is what I promise to do. I will comply with the security regulation and procedures to protect classified and other sensitive information. I will comply with the standards of conduct required for persons holding positions of trust. I will report to my security officer and any appropriate authority any information that comes to my attention regarding known or suspected foreign intelligence activity directed against me, my coworkers, my organization, or any other national interest. As I said, it is a big deal. These are lifetime responsibilities, which means once you have a security clearance, if you finish working with that agency or that government contractor and you move on into private industry, some of the information that you have been exposed to will be of a classified nature beyond your employment with that agency or that contractor. And you will be required to protect that information for the rest of your life. There are actually 3 what they consider lifetime obligations. One of them is that you won't release any information that is of a classified nature that you've come in contact with. The second is that you will report any overheard classified conversations or any classified information that you hear out in the public that should not be released. And the third thing is actually a pre-publication review. if you have worked for a classified project in some way, when you release that information on a resume for the future, it has to be worded in a very specific way so that you don't become a target for any kind of adverse attack as a result of you having a classified procedure or position in the past. In other words, if you have been an agent of the US government in a very important role, we would want to know that you're not putting yourself out there as someone that individuals would look at to blackmail. Some of the things that are important when you have a clearance is taking the time to understand what the foreign threats would be. You know, the difference between what you see on the news and what you're aware of from what your security officer tells you could be very different. And you've seen the stuff on the news about fake news, fake media, all that sort of thing. If there are questions that come up, we encourage you to talk to your security officer or your government representatives so that they can clear that up. And that's what we see here on the first bullet. Reporting to the security officer, any appropriate authority, any information that raises doubts about maybe a coworker that you see or another person that you work with who you think might have access to classified information and that they're not handling it correctly. Obviously, it is a responsibility and a lifelong obligation, as I stated earlier, no matter if the clearance is currently something that you're holding with an employer or not. How long does it remain in effect? Well, generally, as long as you are employed with that contractor or that government agency, you will have that clearance assigned to you. It can reasonably be expected to require access. If you're reasonably required to continue access to classified information, naturally you'll maintain that clearance. However, every few years, we do what they call a periodic reinvestigation. You are required, as I had stated earlier, to let your security officer know if something changes in your life, whether you've gotten married, whether you've gotten divorced, whether you are changing your address. Because as I said before, you are an agent of the United States government because of your asset and responsibilities to a position. It's really important for them to know where you are. There are millions of people running around who have clearances, and if they're needed for something, generally your security officer will know where to find you, but if you moved, your security officer should know that you moved. If you got married, the security officer should know a little bit about the person that you married. Basically, is that person a US citizen? Is that person also have loyalty to the United States? Those are the kinds of things that must be reported as part of holding a clearance. If you have any questions or are looking for more information or something that you would like to see hard copy about getting a clearance or what having a clearance requires, these are 3 separate sites that you can Google and find information about security clearances. And there's probably opportunities there for you to ask specific questions to individuals there. Also, just if you're looking for a general reference, these are 3 sites that we recommend for you. I guess that's it. Does anyone have any questions?
Doretta, it's Lauren. A common question that I see, and you mentioned the TSSCI level clearance. You mentioned there's also other level clearances as well. So there's secret and TS. How does someone qualify for different levels of clearances? What does that mean, and so forth?
Okay, generally the different levels of clearance are based on the project that the individual is working on. Someone who has a top secret clearance, as I said, and we saw on that one slide, means that the information that might be compromised at that level would cause extremely grave damage to national security. Secret level is a level down from that, so that would be severe damage to national security. Confidential is lesser than that. Generally, when you hear me say sensitive compartmented information or SCI, it piggybacks along with that top secret, secret, or confidential clearance. And it is basically based on the agency that the information is about. It is more or less a need to know. When you see the SCI there, you'll hear the joke we always say is, look, I could tell you, but if I told you, I'd have to kill you. My example to explain this to someone is, think of an umbrella, all right? The umbrella itself is the general top secret clearance, or it would be either your top secret or your secret or your confidential, for example, the Department of Defense, okay? And if you look at the points of an umbrella, you know, the drip points, those little pointy things that come around the bottom of the umbrella, those would be maybe the different agencies under the Department of Defense that are different from each other. For example, the Army is different from the Navy, which is different from the Air Force, which is different from the Marines, which is different from the National Security Agency, which is different from the Defense Intelligence Agency, and so on. So each of those little points has specific information that is basically their ball of wax. So if you're working with the Army, you don't need to know what the Navy is doing. If you're working with the Air Force, you may not care about the secrets that the Army has. So those different little classification points are the special compartmented information, sensitive compartmented information. It's basically sensitive information based on an agency. The way to think about it in things that we understand is, imagine a gated community. A gated community, for example, might be the Department of Defense. Each house on the street within that gated community might be a different agency. And then again, inside each house are different rooms. So if you're not working on a project that's happening in the living room, you don't need to be in the living room. You should be in the dining room. Some of the things I tell some of my people here is, an example is your bedroom at home. You may share a room with a sibling, but that sibling is not necessarily entitled to get into your drawer and, you know, your files, your computer files. You want to keep that stuff safe. That is your sensitive compartmented information. That is the stuff that you need to know. That person doesn't need to know that. So that is the way to think about sensitive compartmented information in relationship to having information about the whole project or the whole house, and even backing out as to whether or not you need to know information that affects that whole street. Did that explain it for you?
Yep.
I see a
Does
question.
anyone else have any other questions?
I did see a question from someone who asked about needing sponsorship. That is correct. You need to be sponsored by a government agency to receive a government clearance. So an employer who works with a cleared agency would be requesting that agency to allow you to be cleared for their program.
Do we have any other questions, thoughts? All right, well, Doretta and Lauren, I just want to thank you so much for being here and for just providing all of this information. This is really good information. And I just want to thank our attendees for being here as well. And just hope you have a good day. And if you have any questions about security clearances, please let us know, and we can get in touch with these two ladies. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you very much.